Evan Lewis was not the type of person who liked surprises. He liked things simple, neat, and predictable. But life on a new colony world was never neat. Rent was high, jobs were unstable, and housing was limited. That was why, after a week of searching, he found himself standing in front of a dimly lit apartment door on level 12 of Habitat Tower C, holding a small bag of his belongings. The apartment ad had been clear: shared unit, affordable rent, one roommate, must be open-minded. Evan thought it was strange at first, but the price was so low that he decided to risk it. When the door opened, Evan almost stepped back in surprise. His new roommate was not human. The figure standing in the doorway was tall, thin, and covered in smooth plates that looked like polished bronze. Two large black eyes blinked slowly, reflecting the hallway light. Its mouth clicked softly before it spoke in a voice that was formal and mechanical, like every word had been learned from a translator. "You must be Evan Lewis," the alien said. "I am Zir." "Welcome." Evan forced a smile. He had grown up on Earth, and though he had seen aliens on news broadcasts and in holo recordings, meeting one face-to-face was still new. He had expected maybe another student, not this. Hi. Yes. Evan. Thanks for letting me stay. Zir stepped aside with a stiff gesture. "Enter. The agreement is simple. We share this unit. I do not interfere with your work. You do not interfere with mine. Do you accept this?" Evan nodded quickly. "Yeah, sure. Works for me." The apartment was small but tidy. 2 rooms, a shared kitchen, and a common area with one small window that looked out at the endless city lights. It was not luxury, but it was better than sleeping in the noisy colony dorms. For the first hour, Evan tried to act normal. He unpacked, set his datapad on the desk, and placed a small picture of his family beside it. Zir moved silently around the apartment, never wasting a gesture. It was hard to read his alien body language, but Evan thought he seemed distant. Finally, Zir spoke. "There is one rule," he said, standing tall in the doorway of Evan's room. "After dark you must remain inside your chamber. You must not leave until morning light. Do you understand?" Evan looked up in surprise. "Wait, what? Why?" Zir's large eyes did not blink. "For your safety. The night is not for you. I will seal the door if I must." Evan laughed, nervously. He thought maybe this was some kind of alien superstition, like humans believing in ghosts or unlucky numbers. "You're serious?" "Yes," Zir said simply. "Completely." Evan wanted to ask more, but the tone of Zir's voice left little room for argument. The alien sounded not threatening, but firm, as if this was not a suggestion, but a law of nature he refused to break. "Fine," Evan said with a shrug, though unease was already creeping into his chest. "If it makes you happy, I'll stay in my room at night." That evening, as the artificial sun dipped beyond the colony towers, Zir moved around the apartment with unusual care. He checked the locks, closed the window shutters, and finally walked to Evan's door. "It is time," Zir said quietly. "Remain inside." Before Evan could reply, Zir pressed one clawed finger against the frame. A faint glow spread along the edges of the door, forming a thin resin-like seal. Evan touched it with his hand and felt it harden like glass. "Hey, did you just lock me in?" Zir's voice came muffled through the barrier. "Yes, until sunrise." Evan stepped back, staring at the sealed door. His heart beat faster, not from fear exactly, but from the strange sense that he had just agreed to something much bigger than he understood. Minutes passed. At first the room was silent except for the hum of the air vents. Evan tried to read, but his eyes kept glancing toward the glowing outline of the door. Why would Zir lock him inside? What danger could be out there? Then, at midnight, he heard a low clicking sound like metal tapping against metal. It echoed from the kitchen. He froze, holding his breath. The sound grew louder, joined by a deep vibration that shook the floor. Evan gripped his datapad like a weapon, though he knew it was useless. He leaned closer to the door. There were footsteps, heavy, deliberate. Something moved past his door, and for a brief second a shadow blocked the thin light at the bottom. Evan's skin prickled. His rational mind told him it was just Zir moving around, maybe doing some strange alien routine. But another part of him whispered that something was very wrong. A scraping sound followed, like claws dragging across the wall. Then came a distant shriek, sharp and alien, carried through the ventilation shafts. Evan's stomach tightened. "What is going on out there?" he whispered to himself. He thought about shouting, but stopped. If Zir had locked him in, maybe. There was a reason. Maybe opening his mouth would only make things worse. Hours crawled by. Every few minutes, Evan heard something new. A thud, a hiss, a strange chemical smell that leaked under the door. His datapad recorded the sounds, but no explanation came. By the time the colony's artificial sunrise began to glow faintly through his window, Evan's eyes were red from lack of sleep. His door seal flickered, then melted away. The apartment was silent again. Evan opened the door slowly. The kitchen was spotless, the common room neat. No sign of the noises, no marks on the walls. Zir stood near the window, his posture calm, though his black eyes seemed a little dimmer than before. "Good morning," Zir said flatly. Evan's mouth was dry. He wanted to demand answers, to ask what those sounds were, but he held back. Something told him Zir would not explain. Not yet. Instead, Evan just said, "Morning," and in that moment he knew two things for certain. This was not going to be a normal roommate experience, and he was not going to sleep easily in this apartment again. Evan woke slowly to the soft hum of the colony's morning lights. The strange events of the previous night were still fresh in his mind. He rubbed his eyes and stretched, trying to convince himself that it had all been a dream. But then he noticed the faint scorch marks near the doorframe of his bedroom and the sticky residue from the resin seal. That was no dream. Zir had really locked him in. Evan paced his small room, thinking, why would his roommate go to such lengths? Surely it wasn't just a quirky alien habit. Something serious must have happened. The clicking, the vibrations, the strange sounds, they hadn't been random. Something had been out there, moving in the dark. And Zir had acted to protect him. Despite his nervousness, Evan's curiosity was stronger than his fear. He pressed his ear to the door, trying to hear Zir moving in the apartment. The kitchen was quiet, and even the soft whir of the air vent was steady and calm. That was good. For now, he thought. He dressed quickly and stepped into the shared space, keeping his distance from Zir. The alien didn't acknowledge him beyond a brief nod. Evan's first instinct was to ask what had happened, but he hesitated. He didn't know how Zir would respond. Instead, he decided to explore the apartment, looking for any clues about Zir's behavior. There were no obvious weapons, no strange devices, at least none that Evan could understand. Everything in the apartment looked ordinary, neat, and oddly sterile. Evan's thoughts drifted back to last night. The noises, the vibrations, the scraping sounds. Whatever Zir was hiding, it was dangerous, and that worried him more than anything. He had grown up reading adventure stories about humans facing impossible odds, and a small part of him felt excited. Not thrilled exactly, just alert, ready to face whatever came next. By mid-morning, Evan realized he needed answers. He decided to speak directly to Zir. "Hey," Evan said carefully, standing in front of the alien. "About last night. Can you explain what was going on?" Zir paused, his large eyes narrowing slightly. "It is not necessary for you to know everything. You were at risk. My duty was to protect you," Evan frowned. "Protect me from what? Please, I need to understand. I can handle it." Zir tilted his head. "Your species is fragile during night cycles. Mine is different. There are things that happen after dark. I cannot control them fully. It is safest if humans remain isolated." Evan blinked. "You mean there's some kind of danger? To me?" "Yes," Zir said simply. "And to the unit, if precautions are not followed." Evan's mind raced. He had read about alien species that changed forms or exhibited unusual behaviors under certain conditions, but he had never met one. His roommate's species clearly had some extreme biological trait that activated during the night. But what, and why hadn't Zir told him before? Evan decided that observing Zir might be the only way to understand. He set up a small datapad in the corner of his room to record movements in the common area. He didn't plan to spy in a mean way. He simply wanted to gather information for his own safety. As the hours passed, the apartment remained quiet. Too quiet, Evan thought. He peeked into the kitchen and noticed faint scratches along the floorboards, marks that hadn't been there before. They were small, precise, and repeated in a pattern that suggested someone, or something, had been pacing. Evan scribbled notes on his datapad: pattern of movement, night activity, possible transformation, risk level high. The colony night stretched endlessly outside Evan's window, but inside his small bedroom the tension grew with every passing hour. He had learned to expect strange noises, clicks, thuds, and vibrations in the floorboards. Yet tonight, something was different. The sounds seemed closer, sharper, as if whatever moved in the shadows was aware of him. Evan pressed his back against the wall, trying to make himself small, like a human might when hiding from a predator. His datapad lay on the desk, still recording. He had begun to notice patterns in Zir's movements: slow pacing, deliberate pauses, and occasional stops near his bedroom door. Curiosity and fear mingled in his chest. The rational part of him reminded him that Zir had locked him in for his safety. But another part wondered if there was more. A secret Zir was hiding, something that might explain the strange transformation he had hinted at earlier. He remembered the faint scratches on the floor and walls from the night before. Carefully, he gathered small scraps of paper and a pencil, sketching a map of the apartment and marking the locations where sounds seemed to originate. Each mark was a clue, and Evan felt the thrill of a detective solving a mystery. Hours passed, and the noises grew more pronounced. Evan heard a dragging sound along the kitchen wall, followed by a soft, guttural hiss. He pressed his ear to the door and realized that the vibrations weren't random. Zir's body, or something about it, was interacting with the apartment in a very precise way. Evan's mind raced. He recalled stories about alien species that experienced biological changes at night. Some grew stronger, some became more aggressive, and some entered states completely different from their daytime selves. Could Zir be undergoing such a change? And if so, was that the reason he had been locked inside last night? To find answers, Evan needed to be observant without interfering. He repositioned his datapad, angling it toward the doorway to capture any movement he could detect. He also set up small cups and strings around the room as basic indicators. If anything heavy or large moved toward him, the cups would fall or the strings would tug, alerting him. The first few hours passed without incident, but just past midnight, the familiar vibrations returned. This time they were stronger, more deliberate. The floor beneath Evan's feet trembled slightly. Then he saw it. A shadow flickering along the edge of the door. A long, thin silhouette, taller than any human, moving with careful precision. Evan's heart pounded, but he stayed calm. He watched intently, noting every motion. The shadow didn't try to open the door or harm him. Instead, it paused, then retreated slowly, almost as if it were listening. That's when Evan realized the truth. Zir was not fully in control of his own body during the night. There was something innate in his species, some instinct that emerged after dark. The alien had sealed him inside to protect him, not to punish or frighten him. Zir was fighting, an internal struggle, a transformation he could not prevent. Evan felt a mixture of awe and sympathy. This was not an enemy. It was a being struggling against its own biology. And yet, despite the danger, Zir had respected human life enough to keep him safe. Hours dragged on. The shadow reappeared several times, moving with careful pacing around the common area. Evan noted patterns, Zir would circle near the window, then stop near the kitchen and occasionally pace toward the center of the apartment. Every movement was precise, as if choreographed, yet unpredictable enough to remain tense. Evan also noticed subtle changes in the alien's behavior. The clicking of Zir's mandibles grew slower at times, almost like a sigh. The vibrations in the floor fluctuated, suggesting some physical struggle. And occasionally a low hum, almost musical, escaped from Zir, as if he was trying to calm himself. Evan's mind turned to solutions. Humans had survived harsh environments by using intellect, creativity, and observation. If he could understand Zir's patterns, maybe he could devise a way to help, or at least prepare for the next night. He began experimenting quietly, using small objects from his desk. A cup tipped over at a certain vibration. A pencil shifted when Zir's shadow passed nearby. Evan noted every detail, building a mental model of how the alien moved, how the apartment responded, and how the night unfolded. As hours passed, Evan realized something important. He was not merely a passive observer, he was participating. His observations, his notes, his careful attention were forming a plan. Humans were known for resilience, for finding solutions in impossible situations. And tonight, that ingenuity would be tested. Near the early hours of dawn, the vibrations slowed. The shadow stopped moving and the faint hum subsided. The resin on Evan's door had begun to flicker, signaling that morning light was approaching. Evan exhaled deeply, relieved that the night had ended without incident. The apartment was quiet again. Evan leaned against the door, staring at the small scratches and faint marks that told the story of the night. Zir had not harmed him. Zir had struggled alone, in silence, to protect him. And in that moment, Evan understood something essential about humans and their place in the universe. Survival wasn't just about strength. It was about intelligence, observation, and empathy. When Zir finally emerged from the shadows, tall and still glistening faintly with the remnants of his nighttime struggle, he regarded Evan with an unreadable expression. The alien said nothing at first. Then in his calm, clipped voice, "You have observed well. You understand patterns quickly. This is unusual for a human." Evan nodded. "I'm learning, and I want to help. If this, whatever happens at night, is dangerous, I want to understand it. I don't want to just be protected. I want to work with you." Zir paused. The black eyes blinked slowly. For a moment it seemed as if he was considering the offer. Then he said quietly, almost to himself, "Perhaps this is the beginning of cooperation. Humans are clever. They adapt. They survive." Evan smiled faintly. It wasn't relief. Not yet. There were still many nights ahead, many mysteries to solve, and many dangers he didn't fully understand. But for the first time, he felt a connection. Not just to his roommate, but to the essence of what made humans remarkable. He had survived one night. He had observed, adapted, and learned. And in the dark, Evan knew this. The nights would be long, but humans always find a way. The next evening, Evan prepared himself differently. He had survived 2 nights now, observed Zir's strange nocturnal behaviors, and taken careful notes on every sound, vibration, and shadow. But tonight, he decided he would do more than just watch. He would try to understand and, if possible, gain some control over the unpredictable situation. Evan's room felt like a small lab. He gathered everything he could find that might serve as a sensor or signal: strings, cups, a small battery pack, a metal spoon, even a pen. He set them carefully along the floor near the door and in corners where shadows often passed. Each object was positioned to move or fall if Zir came near. It was a simple idea, but Evan was proud. Humans survived because they adapted. Even with minimal tools, intelligence and creativity often outweighed strength. He reminded himself of the countless explorers on Earth who had faced dangers far larger and deadlier than this insectoid alien roommate. When the first flicker of dusk touched the apartment, Evan noticed Zir moving near the common room window. The alien's movements were deliberate, slow, and measured, a dance of restraint. Evan crouched behind his desk, observing. Every step Zir took caused a faint vibration, which made Evan's small sensors twitch. The cups wobbled and the string tugged lightly. Evan smiled. He was beginning to predict Zir's movements. Patterns were emerging. The pacing followed certain paths at certain intervals. Zir would pause near the kitchen, circle the living area, then head toward the center of the apartment. The timing was precise, almost mechanical. Armed with this knowledge, Evan decided to push his experiment further. He wanted to see if Zir's behavior could be gently influenced without danger. Using a small LED from his datapad and the battery pack, he created a soft, blinking light, placing it near the center of the room. Humans had a natural ability to associate signals with movement. Perhaps Zir would react similarly. As night fell, the apartment grew dark and the familiar clicks and scrapes began. Evan stayed calm, crouched behind his desk. He waited for Zir's shadow to appear near the center of the room. When it did, he switched on the blinking light. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, Zir paused. His large black eyes turned toward the blinking light. The pacing stopped. The vibrations in the floor slowed. And then, Zir emitted a soft hum, almost like a note, rhythmic and gentle. Evan realized it worked. Zir was responding subtly to external cues. Even during this uncontrollable transformation, a simple signal could guide his movements. Humans survived in strange worlds because they observed patterns and experimented with solutions. And tonight, Evan had proof. Even a powerful alien could be influenced by simple, clever interventions. The night continued. Zir's movements grew more erratic as his instincts surged, but Evan's sensors and lights provided enough guidance to avoid danger. Small cups tipped occasionally, cords tugged lightly. Sigh the night. The clicks became rapid, vibrations strong, and faint shudders ran through. The first light of the colony's artificial sunrise crept softly across the walls of Evan's bedroom. After another long night of observing Zir, the room felt calm for the first time. Evan stretched, rubbing his tired eyes. He had survived. Another night, taken careful notes, and even influenced Zir's behavior with simple devices and observation. But he still didn't know the full truth. He opened the bedroom door slowly. The seal from the resin had dissolved completely. The common room was quiet, neat, and spotless. No sign of last night's activity. Only the faint scratches and vibrations on the floorboards. Evan stepped out cautiously, his mind alert for anything unusual. Zir stood near the window, tall, his bronze plates glinting faintly in the morning light. His black eyes were calm but seemed tired, as if the long night had drained him. He regarded Evan silently, the faint hum of his internal system still echoing in the quiet apartment. Evan swallowed and spoke carefully. "Zir, I need to know. What really happens at night? Why do you lock me in?" Zir paused, his mandibles clicking softly as he considered. "It is difficult to explain. My species experiences a biological transformation nightly. During this cycle, we become aggressive, uncontrolled. Most of my kind remain in isolation during these hours. I chose to live with humans, to learn to understand your species. But the transformation is dangerous. I cannot always control it." Evan's stomach tightened. He had suspected something, but hearing the truth was different. Zir wasn't malicious. The alien was fighting against an uncontrollable instinct, something natural to his species. So, last night, and the night before, Evan hesitated. All the noises, the vibrations, the shadows. You were trying to protect me? Yes, Zir said simply. I sealed you inside to ensure your safety. My instinct is violent during the night. I could harm humans accidentally. It is necessary to isolate you. Evan took a deep breath. His fear began to mix with understanding. The strange, frightening events of the past nights were not attacks. They were struggles. Zir had endured something dangerous and kept him safe. That realization brought a mix of relief and admiration. Humans survived not through brute strength, but through observation, planning, and adaptability. And tonight, Evan's ability to learn and influence had made a difference. "Why live with humans if your species is so dangerous at night?" Evan asked, curiosity rising. "Why not stay in isolation like everyone else?" Zir's large eyes blinked slowly. "I wished to experience your species fully, to learn cooperation, reasoning, and ingenuity. I believed that human traits are unique, and perhaps I could overcome some of my instincts by observing you." Evan felt a sense of pride. Humans were clever, resourceful, and adaptable. Even in the most dangerous situations, they could think and act with intelligence, and apparently, Zir had recognized that. "I understand now," Evan said. "I can see why you acted the way you did. And I think maybe we can work together. Humans survive better when we cooperate. If you need help managing your transformation, I can help." Zir tilted his head, a slow click echoing from his throat. "Help from a human? Unusual, but effective. Your observations, interventions, and timing during the night have improved outcomes. Perhaps we can develop better safeguards together." Evan nodded. "Exactly. I don't want to just stay safe. I want to understand and help. Humans adapt, and we can use intelligence to solve problems. You don't have to face this alone anymore." For the first time, Zir's posture seemed to relax. He had been tense, restrained, and wary for the entire night. But now there was a subtle change. His large eyes softened slightly. "Humans, remarkable. You survive, not by strength, but by thought, observation, and cooperation. Perhaps this is why your species persists." Evan smiled faintly. He felt a connection forming, not just between roommates, but between two species, learning from each other. He thought of the nights filled with strange noises, the vibrations, and the shadowy movements. Every frightening moment had become a lesson. Every observation had been a step toward understanding. "Zir," Evan said, "I want to keep learning. I want to help you manage your nights, and I want to see if humans and aliens can really work together, even when it seems impossible." The alien hesitated, then made a soft clicking sound. "Cooperation, unusual, but effective. I will allow this arrangement. Humans are clever. Your species adapts and survives. Perhaps together we can endure what would otherwise be impossible." Evan felt a surge of determination. Nights would still be long, and Zir's transformations would continue. But he had learned something essential. Humans were not fragile observers. They were planners, problem solvers, and adaptable creatures who could survive in the most unusual circumstances. And now, Zir recognized that too. The morning light strengthened, and the hum of the colony outside the apartment grew louder. Life on the colony continued, unaware of the small apartment where a human and an alien had endured nights filled with fear, observation, and ingenuity. But inside, a bond had formed. Evan realized that the truth about Zir's species didn't make him weaker. It made cooperation more important. Humans survived by thinking, by planning, and by helping each other. And now Evan would apply those lessons to the strange, powerful, and unpredictable roommate beside him. By mid-morning, Zir and Evan began quietly preparing for the next night. Simple devices, observation strategies, and understanding of patterns would guide them. Evan felt a mix of excitement and determination. Humans had survived harsh conditions for millennia, and the lessons of the past nights proved that human ingenuity could shine even in alien environments. Zir regarded Evan with what could almost be called respect. "You are small, fragile, yet stronger than many I have known. Humans are remarkable. Perhaps this is why your species persists." Evan smiled, feeling pride and hope. Despite the fear, the shadows, and the unknown, humans always found a way. And together, he and Zir would face the coming nights, clever, observant, and ready. In that quiet apartment, surrounded by scratches on the floor and faint echoes of the nights past, Evan understood something vital. Humans survive, not because they are the strongest, but because they can think, adapt, and act when it matters most. And sometimes that cleverness could even influence the unknown. The next night, Evan felt ready. He had survived 5 nights of uncertainty, fear, and observation. Each night had taught him something new about Zir, about his alien instincts, and about how humans could survive even in strange and dangerous situations. Tonight he would take it further. Tonight, he would work with Zir. As dusk fell, the apartment filled with the soft hum of the colony's artificial lights. Evan arranged his simple sensors, cups on the floor, strings across corners, and a small blinking light in the center of the room. He placed his datapad where he could see it and quickly reviewed his notes on Zir's movement patterns. Humans thrived through observation and planning, and tonight he would put both to the test. Zir moved through the apartment, gliding past the common room, his bronze plates reflecting the dim light. His black eyes flickered briefly toward Evan, acknowledging his presence. There was no fear, only quiet tension. Evan's human instincts told him to stay alert, but also to remain calm. As the night deepened, the familiar vibrations began. The eye clicks, the soft thuds, the pacing, all signs that Zir's transformation was beginning. Evan observed closely, noting each subtle shift in behavior. When the alien moved near the blinking light, he hesitated. Evan's heart raced with quiet excitement. This was progress. He activated a second light on the opposite side of the room. Zir paused again, almost like he was listening. The hums from his throat grew softer and his pacing slowed. Evan realized something important. His simple human interventions were influencing Zir's instincts, guiding the transformation without causing harm. Humans survived not just by strength but by cleverness, observation, planning, and gentle influence. Evan leaned closer to his datapad, recording every detail. The movement patterns, the hums, the vibrations, everything mattered. He began to anticipate Zir's actions. When the alien approached the center of the apartment, Evan switched the lights in a sequence he had practiced. Zir hesitated, then moved along the path Evan had predicted. Hours passed. The apartment trembled faintly as Zir's instincts surged, but Evan's careful placement of objects and signals kept them both safe. The alien was not being restrained. He was being guided, subtly, without force. Evan marveled at the fact that his species, often considered fragile, could use intelligence to survive alongside one so powerful. Around midnight, the patterns shifted. Zir began pacing more erratically, his hums becoming faster. Evan noticed a section of the apartment where he had not placed any sensors. Quickly, he arranged a few cups and strings, forming a new path that would allow him to track movement. Within minutes, he could predict Zir's steps again. Humans survived by adapting to new challenges, and Evan's quick thinking was proving that lesson once more.